So take 2 on this concept where there is this productivity triangle, and applied to debate. I think that if you're trying to teach a class in debate, you have to pick 2 of the 3 at best, right? But what I think is you have to rank order these, which is, what is your first, second, and third priority? Is it competitive success? Is it life skills? Or is it just general fun?
It's just like the beginning of Kingdom Hearts.
You're lost in some sort of island and then inside a Disney town, and you never get into any of the actual Disney worlds. You know, I played Kingdom Hearts for like 7 hours and never made it to like any. You
must be trash.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and all the controls. It's one of those like X is bad, circle is good games. Totally backwards. Anyway, and what I will say is at DVC, right? I break my students up into 3 different.
I was just say you break your students.
I break my students first with my fists, then with my words. I break them up into 3 different categories. Sometimes I just straight up tell them, I'm like, look, there's 3 paths you can be on. One of them is the nationals path. Sorry, if we're taking to nationals, competitive success has to be your top priority. Then we'll travel you around locally and blah, blah, blah. And like the focus on that is probably life skills and things like that. And the other one is, you go to your one and done tournament. Like you get your A in the class, you have some fun. We meet our quotas, and then you maybe come back next semester, maybe you don't. And I get to work with all those students differently because I have an incredible amount of malleability at DVC. We teach 4 days a week. We can meet at any time outside of those, and I have extra help when I need it. It just makes it really easy to cater the class to individual students, and no one has to be there, right? So I can just tell people, like, today's the day we're doing this. If they're not interested in that, I'll see you the next time, right? It's much more difficult with younger kids who are dropped off somewhere and are supposed to be there, like at school or an after-school thing, right? But I guess let's talk about what the difference between a class. Let's just start with if you were teaching you remember that class we taught in San Jose?
Yeah.
I don't think any of those kids kept competing in debate.
Sure.
And I don't think any of them were interested in debate to start. But we got paid a ridiculous amount of money to babysit these kids for 2 weeks. And ostensibly, that had to be framed around doing debate. So what do you think worked well to that end about how we structured that class?
Well, I think that in that class in particular...
How old were the students?
The youngest student, I think, was 10.
Yeah, it was crazy. I feel like the
They were
oldest
supposed
was
to be
12.
12. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like 12. Maybe there was a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah, I think the one kid was 13.
Yeah.
Supreme kid. The way... So here was the literal structure of the class, and then I'll go into like things that we did.
Because they were long. There were summer classes.
Yeah, these classes
were like 4 hours.
Long enough. Oh, because it was 2
we
parts.
had 2 different classes a day, so they were 4-hour classes.
Yeah, we teach 4-hour classes. The way the classes would work, because we had to teach them, every kid had to come out with a debate format and a speech.
Right.
And so we did, in the first thing we do, whether it was the morning session or the afternoon session, was the speech class usually, and we would just kind of knock that out. And me and Cezanne, neither of our particular specialties or enjoyment is speech.
I can teach speech, but
is speech, and so we just did that and we knocked it out, and then we'd give the kids a little break.
So the debate portion was really only 2 hours. So it was a 2-hour.
Yeah.
So cool. So it was a 2-hour debate class, as far as the debate stuff matters.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then skip all that nonsense. We go to debate. In terms of the debate class, we would usually start out with doing a lecture type thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that would just be either me or Sasan up at the whiteboard and just be
Well, we actually start with a highlight, low light.
Oh, you're right. I forgot.
So, yeah, I know. This is something I got from Tony. You basically go around the class, ask everyone what their name is and what the highlight of the week was and what the low light of the week was, and you just make jokes about that. You ask them questions. I don't know. I inject a lot of personality into it just because that's how I am. That's how I am with everyone. With the person at the counter when I'm buying food, right? So anytime a kid's like complaining about a teacher at school, be like, "What's this person's name?" Go like, "Miss Bellum." I don't know. That's actually from Powerpuff Girls. I'd be like, "Miss Bellum, who's a better teacher, me or Miss Bellum?" And they'll be like, I don't know." Be like, "Yeah, but who do you like more?" They're like, "You, I guess." I'm like, "That's right." It's just, by the end of the year, I know all these kids' teachers and which ones they like more than me and which ones they like less. And they'll be like, Mr. Stevens is funny." I'm like, yeah, you think Mr. Stevens is funny, you know. But anyway, you just sort of get to know the people. Make them a little bit comfortable, get them to share things. And that takes a few minutes out of the class, but I think is really important, especially with this intent in mind. If you're just trying to get people to have fun, I think goofing around and getting them to just say their favorite flavor of ice cream and then you make jokes about that, like, goes a really long way. Because if you're just getting nothing back when you're trying to have discussions, it's torture. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then we do lectures.
Yeah. And,
I mean, there's kind of a lecture order that's, relevant. And Sasan almost always does the first one, which is either his, like, syllogism thing or his, like, we gotta get a dog, blah, 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 blah stuff. And then from there, we usually move towards things like, did we do topic discussion first or advantages first? I think we do advantages next, right? Whatever, one or the other, right?
I think we do topics usually.
So with topics, right? We talk about the topic, just give people a general idea about it, blah, 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 blah.
Have them try to make arguments, and then we teach them how to structure those arguments better. So we teach advantage or whatever structure in the context of you already know what you want to say. Here's how to apply.
Yeah, and then eventually we get to the point of the class where we go, so here's what we think are like the top arguments for this. Like, pick some of them.
But we're going weeks down.
Yeah,
right?
this isn't
weeks.
one.
This isn't one class.
Yeah, and so then it's like, cool. So now that you know about the topic a little bit, well, and depending on the format, we'll have a day where it's like, here's how you cut a card, blah 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 blah, that kind of nonsense. But usually, no matter what the format is, we teach them parley format first in terms of like, okay, just write out what this would look like if pretending there was evidence that agreed with you. What would it say?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And then get the structure of like uniqueness, link, internal link, impact. And then we go, cool, now go home and actually try and find one of those cards or two of those cards. And then it progresses until they have a case. And then we start doing little kind of debatey games sometimes, right? Where it's like, okay, you have to come up with I'm going to say this thing, and you just have to give me 3 reasons I'm wrong, or 3 reasons I'm right, or whatever, right? Or just, tell me, or I'll cut a big file of cards and be like, okay, these all answer this and this and this, but you tell me which one you would use and why you like it, etc., right?
And ideally, the last 2 or 3 sessions is just debate.
Yeah, it's just practice debates, right? But I think a big part of it is we definitely gamify it in the mid-range, right? When we're in the mid-range, it's like, cool, so this is a big thing the Gracie family, the jiu-jitsu family talks about, where they advocate for teaching your kids jiu-jitsu like from like basically the day they're born. And like one of the big things that it's crazy, but they really do it. And like, so one of the things,
what do you mean, they just wrestle infants?
Yeah,
like there's no teaching.
No,
well,
so
there's
so,
no like pointing to a board.
But so that's what this is crazy. I think this is really cool. You're gonna think it's psycho.
Yeah, it sounds psycho.
It's not so like they'll like, when their kids are like 1 or 2. And their kids like laying on, like when they can walk, right? Totally fine. They'll play a game where it's like, so the kid will be laying on its back, right? And then the dad will be like, oh, I'm a monster, blah, 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 and like try and crawl over them, right? And then he's like, now you have to go like this, right? And like push out and turn to your side to get away from me. And then I'm going to get you, and then you have to go like that, right? But that in jiu-jitsu is the hip escape, right? From someone being on top of you in the mount. And they start teaching their kids that at 2. And then when they're 5, they're like, by the way, you already know how to escape this. Just do the game we used to play when we were a kid. And they have like dozens of games like that, right? And I think that thing where, basically my real thing, what I'm saying is teaching kids without them knowing they're learning is super duper important. Huge. Forget the weird daddy bear.
So
like,
for one of the classes we taught that was just for fun or whatever, we had we picked one of the potential LD topics out of a hat to prep, so that way...
Mountain View? We're talking about that, or what are we talking about?
No, we're talking about...
Oh, sure, we're still... Okay, cool.
San Jose. So we did the nuclear arsenals LD topic that didn't end up being used, and I had to teach these kids about mutually assured destruction. So I just made up a really dumb game, basically. It was super dumb and not a great game, but it demonstrated the point. So we all got in a circle, and we all had like a card or something, right? And so we decided that, like, so the way the game worked is you went around in a circle, and if it was your turn, you would get to take a card from someone. You could get to take all of their cards. And if you ran out of cards, you were out of the game. And so it was just the least fair, least fun game ever, right? So, like, there's 5 of us, you know, and player 1 takes from player 4, and then player 2 takes from player 5, player 3 takes from player 1, and then player 2 and 3 are the only ones left, so then 2 takes from 3, and then 2 wins. And we play that a couple times around until they get the concept that, like, going first is great. Because if you don't get to go, then you might not get a chance to do anything. So then you play the game again, but and you say the first time around that they can steal or they can pass, and no one passes. No one ever passes a turn. So then the second time around you say, okay, same game, you can steal or you can pass, but if you steal, you also lose. Like, you also lose all your cards. And then so you just get everyone going around in a circle saying pass. And that demonstrates the fundamentals of mutually assured destruction, right? Like, without it, you are incentivizing striking first, and with it, you're incentivizing not striking at all. And then that turns into the lecture. So that takes a lot of time. I might not do that in a class that's framed around being more competitive, because I'll be like, here's a goddamn
article, especially if they're older.
Read it.
Yeah,
especially if they're older, right? But I think when it's a class like that, you really need to disguise the learning as fun whenever possible.
And I think
and like when we were teaching flowing, we would play these games, right, where we would, like, tell a story, and you'd have to write it all out as much as possible, and just make the story super silly, right? So, frankly, like, flowing an actual debate isn't that much different from flowing a really silly story. So if they can flow a silly story, they've gotten the main lesson that they need to get. Now, they're probably not as competitive as someone who's been flowing real debates, because that has tangential things that you learn in the process of doing that. But, like, those are the sacrifices you make. If fun is the priority, those are the sacrifices you make.
Another good, easy, flowing game, just whatever, because there's a teacher or something. Same thing, get a deck of cards. You can do a lot of things with a deck of cards. And you just go, okay, I'm going to turn over and just say it like it's an argument, and just be like, the affirmative says King of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds, and King of Spades, whatever, right? The negative responded with 2 of Clubs, whatever, right? And then have them flowing that out. And especially because cards, the reason it's good is because it teaches you shorthand, because no one writes out King of Hearts. They just write K Heart or KH or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
and it's also cool because you read it back to them, and you ask them to tell you what happened in the debate, not in the order you read it, but in the sort of horizontally, right? Yeah. The first argument is this, to which this was responded, and then that. Yeah. So that also demonstrates whether they're getting the structure of the flow correctly.
Yeah. Here's something I've been thinking about during this discussion. I think one of the important considerations for planning a class is attendance. And what I mean by that is, do you have a class where you are pretty sure every single class the same people are going to be there, or do you have a class where attendance is intermittent, or do you have a class where people can come in at any time during the year, right? Yeah. Because when we teach at Golden State, or any of those camps we've done, right? it's very much a thing where missing a day is probably bad for you, especially unless you're in like open or like advanced or whatever. It's probably really bad for you to miss a day because we don't have time to go back and do that same lesson again, right? And we can try and catch you up, whatever, but like you're in trouble. And this happens to people all the time in real school, right? Where it's like, I missed how to do the quadratic equation, and now for the rest of my life, I'm just bodied or whatever, right? Because people, especially when you're young, you're afraid to ask for help or like say that you don't know how to do that thing because you missed it or whatever, and vacations come up or whatever. But as a result of that, right, in college, and I think just in competitive teams in general, every single competitive practice almost looks exactly the same.
Right.
It's just... Like at Pacific, I can tell you right now, you come to Pacific, go ahead, right? Hit me up. I'll let you know how it's going there. You come to Pacific, every single Thursday, basically, you're going to do 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're going to do 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds, depends on his national season. You're going to do 3 rounds, and you're going to have different coaches and different matchup, and that's it. We're going to send you home after that. We're going to do 2 rounds, and then dinner, and then 1 more round, and then you're going home, right? We'll be there from 3:30 till about 8 o'clock if things go well, maybe a little longer if they don't. You're in college, so it's okay.
Well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because that's something to talk about later when competitive success is your main focus.
I guess, but I just mean like for a teacher perspective, right? In terms of like knowing whether people are going to be there every single class makes a difference, because if they are going to be there every single class, then you probably want a linear progression of like we go from thing A to thing A1 to thing A2.
Yeah.
Whereas if that is not the case, you want the kind of system that, again, jiu-jitsu schools kind of use, where it's like, it really doesn't matter if you don't know a Kimura versus a triangle versus a whatever. So on any given day, they just decide, we're doing this move today. And that's it.
Yeah, which is sort of how this channel works.
Yeah.
The way this channel works is today we're talking about how to ask good questions, and next week we're talking about how to write good impacts. Both are important things that don't need to be learned in any particular order necessarily. Now, if I had one class of people every day for a set amount of time, I'd probably pick an order. But,
exactly.
But the fact is that you don't need to, because I don't know who's watching, and if somebody, even if I make all the videos in the correct order, one, that'll be really boring for me and really boring for anyone who already knows that stuff starting out.
I just saw on your most recent video that bend over.
Yeah, dude. I love that.
Our first subscriber, what a legend.
I know. That guy's great.
Hey.
An adult.
An adult?
Yeah, he teaches. He works in finance.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him. But now, like, I'll just make whatever topic I feel like talking about, because by the time most people are watching this in the fall, they're going to go in whatever order they want anyway. So what's the point in me, like, going in that particular...
Yeah. And so, and again, to not totally real, I think that's just an important thing, right? Know your attendance, or know how you're going to have to structure, right? Because we could tell you an ideal format for doing a summer 2-week camp or doing a 3-month
and
camp.
the last thing I'll add on the fun priority class is you always want to end last 30 minutes with a game that has almost nothing to do with debate. I mean, you can make it a game that like has to do with communication skills. So if somebody asks you like why you're accepting money to play video games with children, you have an explanation. But frankly, like, you're giving them 30 minutes of fun as a reward for doing the work when they needed to be doing the work and doing the activities and listening to the lecture, but also so they want to come back before they're good at debate, because they'll start out and they'll want to debate right away. They'll be like, can we do some debates now? And they'll spend the first half of the course being like, can we do some debates? And you're just going to have to keep saying no, because you don't know the topic, you don't know what you're doing, and you probably don't want to be having like debates earlier than that, because you don't want to be instilling and rewarding bad habits. Moving on from that, let's say your priority instead is life skills. How would you focus on those things in a classroom?
Frankly, if I was teaching a debate course about life skills, I don't think I would care about format basically at all. I don't even
I
think
agree.
that any of... I mean, I guess public forum, strangely enough, is probably one of the better formats for the life skills kind of
That's
section.
how they pitch themselves.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's still weird. But basically, for me, it's like, I would kind of take the you approach and be like, okay, here's what public debates look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what a presidential debate looks like, a Hitchens debate looks like, Ben Shapiro destroying the libs looks like, whatever. And then try and, model that, right? And the cool thing about the life skills is that day one, you can do debates, basically, right?
Yeah.
Or at least a sort of facsimile of debate and be like, cool, hey, you today, your job is to advocate for why Steph Curry is better than Kevin Durant. And the other kid has to favor Kevin Durant, right? And you just go and, give him some research time if you want. Yeah. And I guess the prior consideration of that, to speak back to student learning outcomes, is you have to decide ahead of time, what are life skills? Yeah. And what are the ones that I care about, right? Mm-hmm. Because argumentation, public speaking, critical thinking, those are all important life skills that I think people care about in debate.
And here's the thing, you're going to learn research anywhere.
Yeah.
You're going to learn research eventually. So I think that what I will say is that if you're teaching a debate course and it is more focused on people learning debate generally, and you have a choice of what format you use, I would not use a set topic, carded format of debate. Yeah. I would use something like...
Honestly, Parley LD, the old school format that you were a boss at, was probably the best one.
IPDA is also okay.
I guess that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Parley, IPDA... SPAR is a thing. I don't really know what it is, but whatever. I mean, just basically something where they can research very, very quickly. Because the background knowledge, whatever, and this also applies to the fun class, though I think the fun class, you might even want the set topic just so that you can get straight into debates once they sort of know how to do it. But the life skills class, I would say the most important skills that you get out of debate are identifying impacts, arguing impacts, counter arguments, and doing all of those things at speed. That's probably it. Beyond that, I mean, cross-ex, stuff like that.
What do you think about, public speaking, though? Or because on here...
Yeah, sure. You'll get that. You'll get that from doing it. Every debate format's going to teach you how to do that. My parents had a very... raising me, their attitude. Because there's, there's all of these products that are made for help your baby learn to walk and stuff like that, right? And my parents' attitude was I haven't seen an adult, a healthy adult, who never learned to walk because their parents just didn't teach them early enough. They'll learn to walk eventually, right? They'll figure it out. Every person figures it out.
His dad's a doctor, just so we're clear.
Yeah, same with speech, right? They're he'll figure it out. Look, he's talking now. Great. I don't have to go buy a baby Einstein or whatever. It'll work out. And so I sort of adopt some of that mentality.
I don't know about that public speaking.
I think so. I think every format of debate gets you speaking in public.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
I don't think you need to do anything.
I think every format of debate gets you speaking, but I think that in terms of the life skills you learn from debate, that's really.
I think that's one of it, but you don't have to adjust for that to happen. That's what I mean.
Okay, got it.
So I'm not saying those things don't matter. My parents aren't saying walking doesn't matter, but they're saying it's gonna happen. They're gonna learn to do that on their own, right? Every format of debate is going to teach you public speaking. It's going to teach you a little bit about research, and cross-examination, right? They're all going to do that. So then at that point, I would focus on what are the other things I care about? That's identifying impacts. That's coming up with arguments. I think that extemporaneous formats of debate practice those skills a lot at a much faster pace because you don't have to do all this deep dive into all this research and then completely change your outlook on it and go for like, now let's think of the ninth best argument on this topic, so to get more argument diversity. Like, I think changing the topics all the time really helps with a life skill focused class. Another thing that I think helps with a class that's focused on life skills is to, frankly, not bother with good strategy. Because a lot of debate strategy is dependent on the format of debate, like on certain.
Yeah, I don't think strategy matters in a life skills class at all.
No, so
I think you just need to have the kids debate.
I don't think. Yeah, have them debate. Don't bother with even topicality or counter plans or whatever.
I don't think you should focus on
the suggestion that people can make a counter blah 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 and talk about opportunity cost is useful, but the fact
I'm in topicality actually. I think that I actually saw someone make this comment. Adam Testerman made this comment.
Yeah.
Great national champion, great coach, one of the most successful coaches and competitors, parlay history. He posted the other day. He's like, every public debate I've ever seen with Zizek in it is clear proof of why topicality does matter in all formats of debate, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, seriously, he just had this one with Jordan Peterson where it's like, you were supposed to defend communism and you're not at all. Like, it's just not in here at all.
Yeah.
And I think that does matter for kids is, like, the recognition that your opponent has moved the goalpost or is not actually talking about the matter at hand is really important. Because that's what people lose a lot of public debate.
But, okay, yes, but the nuanced tea debate, right? Like,
definitely. No, you don't need
right,
structure.
and like the well, here's really the standards that you actually want to care about, and
definitely doesn't matter.
Here's whether the
don't worry about. How about just don't worry about competition when it comes to learning life skills debate, right? Like,
don't worry about big scale competition. In class competition is good, but you don't want to worry about the meta.
Yeah, certainly.
Right? You don't want to worry about, like, well, are you conditional or dispositional? And is there a difference? And how do you answer the Baudrillard argument?
What kind of fiat is this?
Yeah, right. None of that stuff matters, right? Is there anything else on the sort of, like, more life skill approach?
I mean, actually, now that I think about it, I think competition is an important life skill / value to instill in people. I just don't think a debate class is necessarily a good way of doing that.
They'll compete other places.
I mean, life skills, discipline. I think that you should probably set up your class so it's fun, but so that there is an expectation that's like, look, but because especially, you got to remember this. I think this is hard for us to think about sometimes. Maybe less so for you. But I don't teach public speaking just yet, though I will spend the rest of my life doing that. It's kind of weird to think about. But people are afraid to speak in public, and as a result, always try and come up with excuses for why they don't have to or whatever.
Yeah,
and I think that when I say discipline, what I mean is I think you've got to set it up so that it's like, hey, you're going to be speaking today, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like every day.
You got to teach them to kill their inner coward.
Yeah, kill your inner every day and write it on the board.
Yeah, and it...
Mock failures, kill inner coward, actual debate stuff. That was the 3 things I wrote on the board every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sort of when I say life skills, I want to focus on the things that debate teaches you uniquely, but I think public speaking and debate do teach you to mock failure and kill your inner coward more effectively than others. Oh, yeah?
Dare to fail gloriously.
It's a little hokey.
It is a little hokey. He's a good guy. He's really nice.
No, he's great. I agree with the message. It's a little flowery.
It is a little
gloriously.
flowery.
How about just dare to fail?
Yeah, but it's like, I might even say fat. Anyway.
You know how there's always those pop songs that are like, you're all beautiful. Everyone is beautiful. There's no such thing as ugly. I love the message, but I feel like that doesn't convince people. You know? I feel like after a lifetime of being bullied for like having one eye, like they're not going to hear a song and be cured of being self-conscious. And really the issue is that we put too much investment in those things. And those things shouldn't matter, right? Like, of course some people are better looking than others, right? But like that's not what measures someone's worth. So I want to write a pop stadium ballad called "So You're Ugly."
I feel like Randy Newman probably already did that.
Yeah, probably.
Short people ain't.
Alright. Okay. Okay. But for all of those classes, one of the set things is that you want to have everyone meet regularly. You want them all to be there because you want high numbers of participation. And you want to meet for a couple hours once a week, let's say.
Question. Seems relevant. What do you do when you have bad students? Students who just sit in the back like this the whole time and just don't...
Honestly, I make a deal with them. I'm like, you don't want to be here? That's fine. But here's the thing. Your parents are paying money for me to teach you debate. If I don't do that, they'll never know. They'll never know whether you actually know how to debate or not. So, the deal is, you don't hurt my ability to teach other people debate. Just look busy, and I will let you do whatever you want.
Yeah, the look busy video is important.
Oh, look busy is
that's what I'm gonna.
That's what I'm gonna go down for. I give a lecture to all my students. These like middle school students. I'm like, here's the most important life skill you're ever gonna learn, and then I write on the board like looking busy, and it has sources, it has cited evidence, and it's just like, look, at the end of the class, I'm supposed to write a student evaluation, and like, I need excuses to write good things about you, or else it's going to make you look bad, sure, but it's also going to make me look bad, right? Because they're paying me a lot of money. They're paying me, like, a lot of money. So, like, let's just make a deal, right? Like, you don't be disruptive, and I will let you be, doing whatever you're doing. Just look at the ceiling. Be on your laptop when it's appropriate to be and you're not distracting other kids. And it works a lot of the time. You can tell the kids that just don't want to be there, like, they will appreciate you being like, look, just mentally check out. I'm not going to give you any homework. I'm not going to make you do anything. Just, who cares? Right? Like, who cares? I guess it depends on who you're working for, what their expectation of you is. But if the person paying you is like, take someone who doesn't want to learn debate and force them to, then they're a dick. Like, who cares? Honestly, who cares? The only person who should have that expectation is the parents who are paying the money. And you should be upfront with them, and you should be very clear that debate isn't something you can force someone to learn. And they will only learn it by their own interest in the class. And I will do everything I can to appeal to this child and make them interested in doing debate. But if it comes between me trying to beg this person to pay attention at the expense of the 9 other kids in the class, I'm just not going to do it, right? So, if it was one-on-one tutoring, it'd be another thing, right?
I think you need to know the institutional, like, mechanisms you have for that, right? Because as a professor... Yeah, I'm going to be like, get out of my class.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in
here's
college.
An F. Yeah, or like whatever.
Dude,
like,
I tell people, sometimes people are fresh out of high school, they don't get how the game works.
Yeah.
But I'll be like, why are you sitting in the back of my class not paying attention? They'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. Then leave. What? I'm not going to call your mom. Get the fuck out of my class.
Yeah.
What are you doing sleeping in here?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, I haven't really had any problems and too much stuff with things like that. I had it at camp last year, actually, college camp. But these kids weren't paying attention, and like I was like, hey, what, is there a reason you're just not doing this? She was like, oh, just move on. And I'm like, just move on? Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm being, well, actually, I wasn't being paid. I'm kind of being paid. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I work here. This is a debate camp.
The name of the course is on the schedule.
Yeah, I'm like, you can leave though if you want to leave. I don't care.
Yeah.
And whatever, you know, I'm not your dad or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but it basically...
I don't know how to make it clearer. The camps for if you want to get good at debate, this lecture has the title on it. You signed up for intermediate. This is what I think you need to learn. If you think you don't need to learn that, wander around the campus. Enjoy. Like, I'm not in fucking charge of you.
Yeah, actually, I mean, that was a weird thing for me to learn last year. So I went and talked to Steve about it because I had problems with that one kid. I can't remember his name.
I don't remember.
I don't even think he kept doing competing. Him and his friend were there, and but yeah, he was just like talking trash. And then he tried to like clown me or something. And then I got him back really badly in the class. I was like, could you imagine the audacity of being like the worst person at a debate camp and talking to like #1 ranked in the nation person about how they don't know what they're doing? I'm like, wow, that's insane, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sure. But anyway, bottom line, you have to know what you can do, because if you're at an institution where you can talk to their parents, then that's one thing, right? And like, obviously, like, that's such a weird thing, because maybe it's because we're still young, relatively speaking. Like, I don't want to call your parents. I don't want to cause you problems at home.
Dude, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, so just don't make me.
Dude, there's people, young or not, there's people I've worked with who love sending emails home to parents. And like, dude, that like, maybe it's because I was such a bad student. Dude, when I got in trouble with my parents, like, it was horrible. I'm not going to do that to a kid.
Yeah.
And it's not a kid's fault. Why is it the kid's fault they got signed up for a class they don't want to do, where the parent is never going to know?
Yeah.
Never going to know if they actually learned the skill or not.
But basically, what I mean is just, like, know what you can do, know who you can talk to, know what your limits are, and then figure out a solution in that sense. Because, like, the most important thing is not having that student bring down, like, the rest of the class, right? And that, gosh, God, that's another thing we should really talk about, is, like, hopefully, honestly, not even hopefully, probably most of you, if you're a teacher and you're trying to get a debate club started, like, have more experience than, especially me, but probably even Sasan, actually teaching a class. But if you're new to this, right, or if you're a high school student who's trying to get a club going, or if you're, like, college and trying to do the same thing, you have to understand very quickly, and this is something I had to figure out this year, is, like, you're not their friend. Right? And, like, you have a responsibility to them, and you have to maintain control of the classroom, because if you don't, like, that's it. The second the kids think that they can do whatever they want, like, they will. And so you have to have, you know, it in you to be able to be like, well, that's not how this happens, or have, like, mechanisms to resolve those things.
Right.